Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the lives of history's most fascinating military leaders. Today, we're going to explore the life of one of the most feared and enigmatic figures in history, Attila the Hun. This nomadic warlord left an indelible mark on the ancient world, and his name has become synonymous with brutality and conquest. But who was Attila, really? What drove him to achieve such greatness, and what were the formative experiences that shaped him into the leader he became? To answer these questions, we must journey back to the earliest days of Attila's life, a time of mystery and intrigue. Born around 406 AD, in the vast expanse of the Eurasian steppes, Attila was the son of Munzuk, a Hunnic chieftain of some renown. The Huns were a confederation of nomadic tribes, united by their mastery of horseback riding and archery, and their reputation for ferocity in battle. Attila's early life would have been marked by the harsh realities of steppe existence, constant mobility, scarcity of resources, and the ever-present threat of violence. Imagine the unforgiving landscape of the Eurasian steppes, where the winds howl like a chorus of wolves and the sun beats down upon the earth like a relentless hammer. It was here that Attila learned to ride and shoot from a young age, his small hands grasping the reins of a horse as it galloped across the endless plains. He would have been taught by his father and uncles, seasoned warriors who had fought in countless battles against rival tribes and enemy nations. The sound of clashing steel, the scent of sweat and blood, and the cries of the wounded would have been familiar to Attila from a tender age. As a child, Attila would have been immersed in the traditions and customs of his people. He would have learned the stories of his ancestors who had roamed the steppes for generations, leaving behind a trail of conquest and glory. The Huns were a proud and fiercely independent people, with a strong oral tradition and a deep connection to their ancestral lands. Attila's upbringing would have been marked by a strict adherence to these traditions, as well as a constant emphasis on martial prowess and physical toughness. One of the most significant influences on Attila's early life would have been his uncle, Rugila, who played a crucial role in shaping the young warrior's worldview. Rugila was a skilled military leader and a cunning politician who had expanded Hunnic territories through a series of strategic alliances and conquests. It is likely that Attila would have spent time in Rugila's court, learning from his uncle's experiences and absorbing the lessons of statecraft and warfare. Rugila would have taught Attila the importance of adaptability, resilience, and strategic thinking, as well as the value of loyalty, honor, and courage. The historical context of Attila's early years was one of great upheaval and transformation. The Western Roman Empire was in decline, its once mighty legions weakened by corruption, mismanagement, and external pressures. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, was struggling to maintain its borders against the constant threat of barbarian incursions. The Huns, with their lightning-fast mounted archers and their highly mobile lifestyle, were perfectly positioned to take advantage of this chaos. As Attila grew older, he would have become increasingly aware of the opportunities and challenges presented by this tumultuous world. He would have seen the weakness of the Roman Empire, the divisions among its leaders, and the vulnerability of its borders. He would have also witnessed the rise of other barbarian groups, such as the Visigoths and the Vandals, who were carving out their own territories and forging their own destinies. Attila's childhood would have been marked by a series of significant events, including the death of his father, Munzuk, and the subsequent power struggles within the Hunnic Confederation. These early experiences would have taught Attila the importance of adaptability, resilience, and strategic thinking as he navigated the treacherous landscape of steppe politics. He would have learned to form alliances, to negotiate with rival leaders, and to wield power with precision and ruthlessness. The early years of Attila's life were a time of discovery and growth, as he learned to navigate the complexities of his family, his culture, and the wider world beyond. As he approached adulthood, Attila would have been poised on the threshold of greatness, ready to embark on a journey that would take him to the heights of power and leave an indelible mark on the ancient world. The question is, what would drive him to achieve such greatness, and what would be the consequences of his actions? As Attila approached adulthood, he became increasingly embroiled in the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined the Hunnic Confederation. The vast expanse of the Eurasian steppes, stretching from the Caspian Sea to the borders of China, was a cauldron of tribal politics, where shifting allegiances and ancient grudges simmered just below the surface. In 434, following the death of his uncle Rugila, Attila and his brother Bleda inherited the mantle of leadership, with Attila soon emerging as the dominant force. This marked the beginning of a new era in Hunnic history, one characterized by unprecedented expansion, military conquest, and strategic brilliance. The winds of change swept across the steppes, carrying the whispers of a new leader, one who would unite the fractious tribes and unleash a maelstrom of destruction upon the civilized world. Attila's rise to power was not without its challenges, however. The Hunnic Confederation was a loose network of tribes, each with their own distinct culture and traditions. Attila's leadership style, which blended cunning diplomacy with ruthless military might, would ultimately prove to be the key to his success. One of the earliest and most significant campaigns undertaken by Attila was the invasion of the Eastern Roman Empire in 447. At the head of a vast army, estimated to be over 100,000 strong, Attila swept through the Balkans, leaving a trail of destruction and devastation in his wake. The cities of Naissus, Serdica, and Philippopolis were all sacked, their inhabitants either slaughtered or sold into slavery. The Roman Emperor Theodosius II, desperate to stem the tide of the Hunnic advance, agreed to pay Attila an annual tribute of 2,100 pounds of gold, a staggering sum that underscored the gravity of the threat posed by the Huns. As Attila's army marched across the Balkans, the landscape itself seemed to tremble with fear. The once verdant fields and orchards were trampled beneath the hooves of the Hunnic cavalry, leaving behind a scarred and barren terrain that would take generations to heal. The skies grew dark with the smoke of burning cities, and the air was heavy with the stench of death and destruction. It was as if the very fabric of civilization was being torn asunder by the relentless onslaught of the Huns. Attila's military prowess was matched only by his cunning and strategic genius. He was a master of psychological warfare, often using intimidation and deception to achieve his objectives. The Roman historian Priscus, who met with Attila on several occasions, described him as a man of great intelligence and cunning, with a keen mind and a talent for strategy. Attila's ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to pivot and adjust his plans in response to shifting alliances and unexpected challenges, was a hallmark of his leadership style. The legendary general Flavius Aetius, who would eventually face Attila on the battlefields of Gaul, is said to have remarked that Attila's greatest strength lay not in his military might, but in his ability to inspire loyalty and devotion in his followers. The Huns were a fiercely loyal people, bound together by ties of blood and tradition. Attila's leadership tapped into this deep well of loyalty, channeling it into a potent force that would propel the Huns to greatness. As the two armies clashed on the battlefields of Gaul, the fate of Western civilization hung in the balance. The Huns, with their lightning-fast mounted archers and highly mobile cavalry, were initially successful, breaking through the Roman lines and sending the legions reeling. However, the Visigoths, led by King Theodoric, held firm, and eventually the tide of the battle turned in favor of the Romans. Attila, realizing that the campaign was lost, retreated back across the Rhine, his army battered but still intact. Despite this setback, Attila's reputation as a military leader remained unblemished. He continued to expand Hunnic territories, launching campaigns against the Alans, the Burgundians, and the Vandals. His relationship with the Roman Empire was complex and multifaceted, veering wildly between diplomacy and aggression. In 452, he invaded Italy, sacking the city of Aquileia and pushing deep into the peninsula. The Pope Leo I, desperate to prevent further destruction, met with Attila in person, negotiating a peace treaty that spared the city of Rome from destruction. The meeting between Attila and Pope Leo I was a pivotal moment in history, one that would shape the course of European politics for centuries to come. As the two leaders sat down to negotiate, the air was thick with tension. Attila, resplendent in his finest attire, his eyes gleaming with intelligence and cunning, faced off against the Pope, who embodied the spiritual authority of the Roman Catholic Church. The stakes were high, with the fate of Rome hanging precariously in the balance. As they spoke, the sound of clashing steel and the scent of smoke and blood seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the quiet intensity of diplomatic maneuvering. Attila's words were laced with a subtle venom as he probed the Pope's defenses, seeking to exploit any weakness or division. The Pope meanwhile stood firm, his eyes locked on Attila's, his voice steady and unwavering. In the end, it was Attila who blinked, agreeing to spare Rome in exchange for a hefty tribute and a promise of non-aggression from the Roman Empire. As he rode away from the meeting, his army at his back, Attila must have felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had achieved his objectives without resorting to bloodshed. As Attila's power and influence continued to grow, so too did his legend. He became a figure of mythic proportions, a symbol of barbarian ferocity and martial prowess. His name was whispered in terror by the inhabitants of the Roman Empire, who saw him as a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. And yet, despite his fearsome reputation, Attila remained a deeply human figure, driven by a complex mix of motivations and desires. He was a leader, a warrior, and a statesman, with a vision for the future that would leave an indelible mark on the ancient world. The historian Priscus, who knew Attila personally, wrote that he was a man of great passion and energy, with a quick mind and a sharp tongue. Theodoric, the Visigoth king, is said to have remarked that Attila was a leader of unparalleled genius, with a vision for the future that was both compelling and terrifying. As the years passed, Attila's legend would only continue to grow, inspiring generations of leaders and warriors who sought to emulate his example. As Attila's power reached its zenith, his personal life began to unravel like a thread pulled from a richly woven tapestry. The once unyielding bond between him and his sons, particularly Elik, became increasingly strained, frayed by the whispers of favoritism towards his other sons. Historians have long suggested that Elik's eventual rebellion against his father was sparked by this perceived injustice, a festering wound that would ultimately contribute to the downfall of the Hunnic Empire. The tension between Attila and his sons was palpable, a sense of unease that hung in the air like the scent of smoke on a winter's night. Meanwhile, Attila's marriage to the Germanic princess Ildiko proved to be a tumultuous one, with some accounts suggesting that she played a role in his eventual demise. The union was marked by fiery passion and bitter arguments, a combustible mix that would ultimately prove fatal. As the Roman historian Priscus observed, Attila's love for Ildiko was like a raging fire, consuming everything in its path. It is said that on their wedding night, Attila's enthusiasm got the better of him, and he suffered a fatal nosebleed or burst blood vessel, a tragic end to a life marked by conquest and bloodshed. The exact circumstances of his death remain shrouded in mystery, with some historians speculating that he may have been poisoned or even murdered by one of his own family members. Theories abound, but one thing is certain: Attila's passing marked the beginning of the end for the Hunnic Empire. As the news of his death spread like wildfire across the steppes, the very fabric of his empire began to unravel, torn asunder by internal power struggles and external pressures. Despite the controversy surrounding his death, Attila's legacy was cemented in the years that followed. His empire, though it did not long survive him, had a profound impact on the course of European history, shaping the trajectory of the continent for centuries to come. The Huns' lightning-fast mounted archers, their innovative tactics, and their sheer ferocity on the battlefield left an indelible mark on the art of war. As the historian Jordanus so aptly put it, Attila was a man whose name was feared by all and whose deeds were spoken of with awe and wonder. His name became synonymous with terror and fear, inspiring generations of warriors and leaders to come. Today, Attila is remembered as one of the most formidable leaders in human history, a warrior king who united disparate tribes and forged a vast empire through sheer force of will. His military campaigns, though often brutal and devastating, demonstrated a strategic genius that has been studied by military historians for centuries. His impact on the world was profound, shaping the course of European history and leaving behind a lasting legacy that continues to inspire and fascinate us to this day. The paradox of Attila's character, a man capable of great cruelty and great vision, serves as a reminder that even the most flawed individuals can leave an indelible mark on the world. It has been a wild ride, full of twists and turns, victories and defeats. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.